Tyler, you were so quick. I added you over the intro video. The neighborhood, welcome. Thank you both for stopping by. Managed to get um, I'm hesitant to use the word influencer, but I did get the 101. So I got the 101, which is very exciting. Feel like I haven't had the 101 in some time on these. I only have, let's see, hold on. 13 big boards left. That's right. Somehow, with 1 month left, I paced myself so poorly that I am going to run out of BBM bullets. But here we are, and I will just start us off with Ja'Marr Chase. I told myself when I had about 25 drafts left, I was going to start to do weird stuff and flip the board. And I have completely chickened out and not actually done that. Maybe if I had been thinking ahead a little, I might have done something weird there, like taken Neighbors or BTJ in an attempt to get different. But yeah, just didn't do it. Just didn't do it. And we're just going to start out with Ja'Marr Chase. Been a little bit of a slow news period, feels like, in the last few days. The first few days of free agency were fast and furious, and now there are a number of guys who could potentially be impactful, but still don't have landing spots. But now it almost seems like some of those guys are going to be waiting until the draft. Guys like J.K. Dobbins, guys like Elijah Moore, Keenan Allen. Definitely starting to get a little worried that Keenan Allen just retires. I know that was floated out there. I thought it was a little far-fetched, but being that he hasn't signed yet, I'm starting to worry. I've backed off taking him a little, but it does seem like, he's kind of stated he either wants to go back to LA or Chicago. And I think if he signs in either place, he's going to be a riser. So might still sprinkle him in because, he was still quite productive last year. I think if he's back in Chicago, we're all anticipating that offense to be better. Again, I don't really fully understand what his ADP is signifying. If it's a little bit hedgy, that he could potentially rise if he gets one of those anticipated spots, but you're also baked in a little bit of like risk that he retires or risk that he goes somewhere truly terrible. Tyler, we are doing well. It was leg day at the gym today. One of my favorite gym days, and home from that. And yeah, just figured I would have enough time to do a stream or two and get some reps in before a BBM season starts. And then, then it's going to be crazy. We get so many contests, but interesting to see if we lose some because of New York, which is really unfortunate. I don't know what, Underdog is planning, if they're going to reduce the sizes of some contests, if we lose, the puppy 12. There is certainly some potential that some of the smaller contests don't happen, which I don't love, but we will see. But I am excited. I'm really excited for the draft. I think I'm more excited for the draft than I normally am, but that could be because I feel like I've put a lot more effort into learning all the prospects this year. Last year I maxed. It was my first time maxing the big board, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I would really latch on to the latest thing I'd heard, and I've kind of brought into my information sources this year, which has been fun. Get so bored with legs. I don't know. I feel like the thing with legs is my legs get sore immediately, so I'm can definitely tell I worked out more than chest or back, which it's I don't know, maybe that means I'm just not working out my chest and back enough. BBL season, it is, and that is why we're all here. we're working on improving our bankroll as well as our physiques, and that's really what this community is about. I mean, Tyler is truly the one of the heroes of this best ball community, and fans all across the channels. Wherever you go, you will find. Yeah, that was I ran hot in a BR last year. So divisional round. I managed to stack Jaden Daniels with Brian Robinson, which nobody did because it was a bad idea. But you know what? That's what you need. That's what you needed that week, and ended up shipping it, which was pretty cool. I am up now. I think I'm going to take Bucky. Right now I have the Davis Matic rankings, and I'm going to kind of play the hits. Take two of my favorite players here. Bucky Irving seems pretty darn secure in Tampa. I don't really need to go over what he did last year, and play the hits with Garrett Wilson. I have way too much Garrett Wilson, but I think he is a tier above some of the other receivers here. I think Fields can definitely support him. He has succeeded with other far worse quarterbacks. So yeah, neighborhood. I mean, the Tyler fans are legion. So yeah. Have not drafted at the turn in a while, so I'm also not used to having two picks and then like 10 minutes of downtime to talk about stuff. So this is a true test of of the stream here. But I'll pull up the board. I like to do this to make sure people aren't doing anything wonky that I am not noticing. I guess one thing that sticks out is this lad Drake London start. This person said, "Chad, you're a coward. You're not going to flip the board, but I kind of will." I like that. It is pretty tough to pair Lad with London together. I don't see anything wrong with doing that. Otherwise, nothing too crazy. Aquilin Penn, not scared of getting caught in a receiver avalanche with just one through 3 rounds. Same with defense wins. But honestly, if your name is defense, what's more robust RB than not only believing that defense wins championships, but making it your underdog handle, and then playing a format where you don't even get to roster a defense. So when you don't get to roster a defense, what do? Well, you simply load up at running back. So that it's a very underrated edge in these contests. But looking at people's usernames to figure out what they're gonna do, and I say this mostly joking, except I do remember last year I was drafting a BBM, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna push Tua around the corner, around the turn. I had Tyreek and Waddle, and literally at the turn was a guy whose name was Tua Stan, and I'm like, my God, literally, I could not believe it, and he took Tua. So I do say occasionally the username thing can happen. Well, Tyler, I'm very much appreciated. But I will push Burrow. I will not take him at the turn. I don't love taking him in round 4 and 5. I think the road to poverty in these contests is the pocket passer in the early rounds. It just you're threading a very narrow window. I wouldn't say never take them, because obviously Joe Burrow was on a lot of winning teams last year. So I mean, you clearly he helped you if you had him. But there are a lot of teams that get Burrow at 72, and I feel like you're really up against it. It's rare, but it's not impossible. And I think I have some of him there. So I will push Burrow. If he comes back to me at 72, I would definitely take him there. just looking at it, we see Lamar Flowers goes as a little stack to the circa 1991 drafter. The board flipper goes full piss boy here, which is somewhat interesting. Davante Adams, I really like taking him, though it is hard because you could get him, I wouldn't say to fade him, but it always does make me a little nervous because you could potentially be behind a lot of teams. But maybe if you are taking Davante well earlier than other teams were, getting a unique pairing might be the way to do it. So do not mind what they're doing there. All right, defense wins, takes Rashee Rice, which feels like the exact opposite pick for a person who is more conservative minded and taking a lot of running backs. So I don't know. They're all over the place. Wet like on book 1220. What does that name even mean? I don't even want to contemplate that anymore. I'm sure though, taking Davante at 45, he is very much hoping that Jalen Hurts makes it around. So this puts me in an interesting spot where I don't take much Jayden Daniels, but this is a pretty big fall. I'm going to take Jayden Daniels here. I don't really want to push Debo up to take Debo. Let's see, what do we got? This is, I'm going to take, I think I'm going to take Daniels and Hubbard here because I like the receivers you can get at the turn from the one hole. And, I don't build a ton like this. I'm, very much, been brainwashed by the best ball intelligentsia into the 0 RB or hero RB mold. So I do want some teams with some different texture. 3 deviations from wide receiver in the first 5 rounds is a lot more than I normally do, but that's pretty late to get Jayden Daniels. This guy does, despite his weird and upsetting username, get the Hurts Devonta stack, which is pretty hard to get unless you reach. So that is pretty strong. I think that he was able to get that. Yeah, Daniels Chase is fun. I think actually in my last stream, somebody reached and got Chase and then took Daniels at 25. And I was saying how that's kind of a unique combo, getting Chase and Daniels, because Daniels usually goes on this right side of the board. And so there's not going to be a lot of teams that have those 2 players together. So hopefully, yeah, I like this. Hopefully we can land this plane. Hopefully we can land this plane together. So Joe Burrow goes at 54 to someone with no Bengals. You see that from time to time. You often see the Chase Brown drafter as kind of the backstop because Higgins usually goes over here right around where Chase goes on the left side of the board. And then Chase Brown kind of goes somewhere random. 41 was a pretty big fall for... No, I guess that's where Chase Brown has been going. It feels like a bit of a fall for him, though, in this room. But yeah, you'll often see the Chase Brown drafter is kind of the backstop for Burrow. And if not, then Burrow sometimes will wrap all the way around. Tiger Uppercut, welcome. I think you were actually with me in that last draft when someone reached up and took Daniels at 25, but I might have another Garrett Wilson team. I see. I like it. Yeah. I think Davis was talking about like drafting. It was like in the Discord talking about like people not liking to watch the same team get drafted over and over. And I'm like, I think I draft the same team over and over, but for me, the big board is where I want to take some of these stands. Probably going to end up with like something like 1,000 drafts before the year started. And so I guess in the post-draft contest, I might even out my exposures a bit more. But if I'm going to get really player takey, I think this is, for me, the way I want to allocate my contest, this is where I think it's a little more fun. And the advance rate structure here is more forgiving than in, like, say, BBM, where it's very difficult to get teams through. And it's hard enough to just get teams out of your initial pod. Tiger, you are preaching to the uppercut. Garrett Wilson was a first rounder last year. What changed other than he got a better QB? I legitimately don't know. Like, I do not know. But it boggles me. I don't know what else to say on that. I don't understand it. I've heard people say the best team is one you can draft multiple times. I don't know what that means, but I like it because I think I do that. I worry you can draft a team a lot because it's like bad and no one else wants it. But I tell myself it's because I've really kind of created a formula for success that I can follow. But I would hesitate to call any of my best ball endeavors a formula for success here. But let's see. We are coming up. I'm going to sort by ADP. Definitely a few options I'll have at receiver. So, it's one of those things where I was comfortable pushing receiver to this range because I like a lot of these guys. Luther Burden goes. I'm very big on Calvin Ridley this year. And let's see, do I want to stack him with Egbuka or Golden? Egbuka or Golden? I have a lot of Egbuka. I'm just going to take Ridley so I don't auto. All right, we'll make this. I know this is scintillating stuff watching me hem and haw here. You know what? I'll buy this Cowboys steam. Normally I take Egbuka there, so we'll try to vary it. The only thing I hesitate is you were able to get Egbuka in the 90s, so there's probably quite a few teams Golden in the 90s. There's probably some teams with Chase that got Golden here, but I can't really worry about that. Yesterday's price is not today's price. But yeah, there's been some things I've heard about him potentially going to Dallas. I think that would be pretty exciting if he went there. I think a lot of the receiver we like to Dallas hype is us saying Jerry Jones is an idiot, so he's gonna think like us morons who like these rookies more than they should. Who, when we build our mock drafts, just mock the position players because the skill position players because defensive players are boring. But unironically, I feel like Jerry Jones would absolutely love best ball and be really bad at it. But he'd get really into it. And Matthew Golden, between playing at Texas and the hype he got from the combine, does feel like a potential cowboy. And anyway, it does seem like is likely to go in the first round, or at the very least the second, and be hopefully hitting the lineup here. See a little mini run of running backs go there. Aaron Jones at 78. He's a guy I've backed off of significantly since the Mason ad. Aaron Jones famously cannot stay healthy. Mason looked really good in relief of CMC. Mason doesn't really catch passes, so I could definitely see Mason carving out an early down role, carving out a goal line role, and really potentially making Jones a lot less valuable than we've been taking him. That's been my fear since they added Mason. So I have backed off of Jones, who I liked early in the year, because I don't believe the Vikings have a whole lot of draft picks, so they're unlikely to take a running back. And so once they signed Jones and didn't really have anyone else, it felt like it felt like there was a pretty good chance that whoever they added wasn't going to make a huge difference. And instead they added someone who was a very effective, proven NFL running back, which I don't like, but it has also had the additional effect of driving Mason up from being, in the 200s or 190s down all the way into the 150s or so. Let's see where I sort by ADP, and ADPs can be pretty slow to adjust. Yeah, to 140. So he is now, firmly in the drafted in every contest category. He does kind of, to me, beef up this range, which to me was a little bit of a dead zone. Not much buzz on Neal. Dowdle's now just a backup. Javonte Williams is complete dust, in my opinion. If Dallas doesn't add anybody, I'm gonna really eat my words and wish I had him, because he's gonna be out there. But he just seemed wholly ineffective behind a very good O-line. It's not like they were trotting him out there a ton to where he was like gassed. He was just god awful. At least now Mason to me adds someone in that running back range when you're building out the roster, who I think could potentially have both really big contingent upside and just like an everyday job. So our friend defense wins. Building a very meat and potatoes team, adds Isaiah Pacheco. I don't really take much Isaiah Pacheco, but I can't really fault those who do. If Kansas City doesn't add anyone and Pacheco is healthy next year, then he was someone going in the 40s and 50s last year, but it does seem like there is some very significant risk attached to Mr. Pacheco. Normally in this range here, I am adding a quarterback, but being I took Jaden Daniels, that is not how we are going to play it. It's as tempting as it is. Let's see. I think I'm inclined to take Jonnu and Mooney here. I have a ton of Njoku. In my heart of hearts, I have Njoku ranked over Jonnu, but I don't necessarily want to take him over Jonnu every time. And let's see, there's not like a running back I'm really excited about here. All right, we'll take Mooney here. These two picks are not two that I'm super excited about, but I think Atlanta looks to be significantly better than they had been. It seems like Penix really, shown some talent. It'd be interesting to see how that receiver room, the volume gets divvied up, because Mooney was not healthy for at least one of the Penix games, if not most of them. And I have this fear that Atlanta adds somebody, but I think he had a pretty big contract, if I'm not mistaken, when they signed him, to where they have shown some commitment to Mooney, and he was fine last year, so it certainly cannot be a priority. Atlanta, if I'm not mistaken, it's like they haven't taken a defensive player in the first round since like the Carter administration or something like ridiculous. I think it's been like 6 years, but their defense is god awful. So I'm really hoping they invest their draft capital in defensive players who I've never heard of, versus skill position guys to eat into Mooney there. Yeah, it is a tough range, which is why I think I like taking quarterback there. Which is one of the reasons I like hesitate to take earlier quarterback, because it's like I don't know what else to do in that 90 to 110 range, where it's too early to like get crazy with rookie flyers, but the receivers all look pretty sketchy. So I find myself taking quarterback and tight end there a lot. And again, I don't want the texture of my teams to be the same every time. I'll pull up the board, make sure no one's doing anything truly crazy. Duku says a lot of running backs. A lot of running backs on that team. My goodness. But yeah, this range, like just kind of quarterback haven going here. Our board flipper does get to pair Herbert with Ladd, so you do like to see that. You like to see these quarterbacks go to good homes. Mooney seems well situated for me to feel stupid no matter what. Certainly the potential for that, right? I felt stupid fading him last year. I judged him for what he was doing in Chicago, which wasn't much, but then it's like, Fields really struggles to support multiple receivers. That whole offense was pretty bad. And it seems a bit telling that Atlanta was willing to commit to him despite, not necessarily the greatest production. And he was pretty good. And he was very good in relief of London. I believe one of the games London was injured, Mooney went off. I hope I'm not making that up because I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I remember like a huge Mooney spike week game. So it is always nice to see when your receivers have a little contingent upside, because it doesn't always work out the way it does with running backs, where like a backup running back just steps up and gets the volume and the touches. A lot of the times when the elite receiver gets hurt, it gets spread around and the second receiver just keeps doing what they were doing out there. I think Mooney is capable of potentially, having a little bit of hidden upside there. Yeah, I mean, people are saying. But yeah, nice to get the 101, because there's really no other way to get Ja'Marr Chase. He very, very rarely falls. He really only falls if someone's doing something weird. And I think that's probably because like the 101 is a receiver, and then the next three are running backs. So it's not like he's one and Jefferson's two. I think you'd see a lot more flipping if that was the case. I would have loved to take in Cam Scatterbo, but alas, we cannot always get what we want. This continues to be a really gross range. I've got to be honest with you guys. Do not love this. I'm assuming, I think I saw Justin Fields go. Oh, Justin Fields didn't go. I think we're going to add Justin Fields if Gigas does not add a third quarterback, which you never do. And I know I said like, oh, this is the range where I take quarterbacks because it feels safe. So I'm going to keep doing that because do as I say, not as I do. But I do actually think Fields makes sense to stack with Wilson here. I could potentially end at two quarterbacks if I do that. I'd like to add a running back here, but it is so gross. Really out on Bigsby. I don't like Dobbins. I could make this a Tootin team. Just click Fields so I don't auto. Really probably don't need another tight end. I think I'm going to take Tootin here. Play the hits. It's a little early for him, but yeah, I've got issues with these other running backs at this point. I really think Jacksonville is just going to add a running back who is going to just decimate Etienne and Bigsby. I think it was the ship chasing guys were talking about how Etienne makes sense because worst case, he's the backup in Jacksonville. And if that's the case, then what does that make Tank Bigsby? J.K. Dobbins doesn't have a job. Tajay Spears doesn't have ACLs. And then we're down into this like contingent value range of Benson, Mason, Dowdle, which I don't really want as my third running back. And so I'm going to take the mystery box with Tootin. Again, this running back room is pretty lousy, but everything else looks good. We've got Daniels and Fields, and then at wide receiver, Ja'Marr Chase, Garrett Wilson, Calvin Ridley, Matthew Golden, Darnell Mooney, with Jonnu Smith holding down the tight end spot. So my inclination most of the time is to take three QBs but I think I probably need to resist that temptation, having used used that 3-4 turn on Jayden Daniels, and probably should just stick to 2 QBs, because if you don't get the scoring you need with Daniels and Fields, my team's probably in pretty big trouble anyway. So unless there's a big faller late, that'll probably round out the QB room. Looking ahead, Evan Ingram would have potentially been a good pick for me, and then maybe I could have stopped at 2 tight ends. Again, more quarterbacks going in this range. A nice unstacked Trevor Lawrence to a guy who does not have a Jaguar and already has Mahomes. You always like to see that sort of thing. Yep. It takes all kinds, and so there we go. Tank Bigsby off the board. Just seeing again Dak going unstacked, but I like Dak as my second quarterback. I don't think there's anything wrong with taking him there. I absolutely would have taken Jordan Mason at 144, so that is a little disappointing. That's one of those things about picking on the turn is, you can't be afraid to reach ahead of ADP, 10, 15 spots, because if that person fits your team and what you're trying to do, pretty good chance they're not going to come around. And I do think I preferred Tootin to Mason, although maybe there was an argument that this sort of more higher likelihood of immediate production from Mason made sense as a third running back, because I know my third running back is going to at least play twice a year, because of bye weeks. So, definitely some arguments to be made in how I made that selection, but still at the point of the draft where I want to be going for upside versus just locking in points. At least that's how I sort of look at it. What's likely to happen is that there will be a nice fall on Michael Penix, and I will just have to stare longingly at that and not stack him with Mooney, because I think taking a third quarterback in this round is definitely would be an error for me. So looking at ADP, Dobbins ADP of 124 feels a little stale. He falls a lot. I have to imagine his ADP is going to be coming down. Probably should be adding a running back. I think for me it would be maybe a Trey Benson. I don't take a ton of Trey Benson. I'm really not that excited about him. I think if I really had my truth, I think Ray Davis is a better pick than Benson. He's certainly a candidate for this team. Looking at receiver, I mean, we are firmly in the dart throw territory. I think with Chase, Ridley, Golden, and Mooney, what this team needs is running backs more. So I'm going to add Davis and one other probably running back. Let's see. I don't really have anyone that makes sense to stack with my quarterbacks. I'll add Ray Davis. And then tight end, a little bit of a fall on Isaiah Likely. I don't mind Likely. This is a little bit tough. I was going to say I thought Jerome Ford was still there. You know what? I'm going to take Isaiah Likely here. He's a guy who has standalone value and nice contingent upside. I don't mind him as a second tight end past ADP. At this point, the running backs are all very similar. I have a ton of Devin Neal. I don't really know that I need to add him, and I haven't heard the greatest buzz on him with the draft coming up. So decided not to add another Devin Neal share. but did not think Ray Davis would come around to me. How do you feel about Ford just falling into the lion's share of the backfield because the team has so many needs? Yeah, I would have taken Davis and Ford, but Ford went right ahead of me. I think there is a real possibility of that. And I really just don't know what to make of Cleveland. They could be a lot better, or they could just continue to kind of circle the drain. They're really hamstrung by that Deshaun Watson contract, and we'll see what they do to get out of it. But yeah, I don't think that's the most unlikely scenario. I've been trying to get more forward, but find that it just doesn't seem to happen for for whatever reason. All right, Bryce Young goes. I mean, if Penix or Tua come back to me, I could definitely make an argument to add them to this team, because I think both do have pretty big spike week upside. Particularly Tua, who showed, in the past that he can be an absolute smash. And if the Dolphins are any better than they were last year, we could be looking at some bigger upside. All right, there goes Coker. There goes Cam Ward. Cam Ward was in potential consideration earlier because I do think he's going to go to Tennessee, but we will see. At this point, I'll probably take some wide receivers, but we will see. Let's see. All right. Circa winds down the clock to take Trey Benson and then snaps off Rachaad White. I find myself struggling mightily to click Rachaad White. He feels like a player who could potentially be trending towards 0. His role got really diminished as the season went on last year, but he does seem like he's on the team, and so I think he helps potentially limit the likelihood that that Tampa adds another running back. We like to think these guys are safe until like teams do weird stuff, like when the Seahawks drafted Charbonnet in the second round when they already had Walker, who we all loved from the year before. So especially with Bucky not having huge draft capital, not being a huge prospect, there's always the chance that the team see things differently than us fantasy players do. But I think Bucky seems pretty locked in where he is. So Tua and A-Rich go, and now QB gets very thin. Geno, Carr, and Shadur Sanders, really the only ones who seem assured to be starters at some point next year. Aaron Rodgers, we still just don't know. And then Jameis flying up boards, went from completely undrafted to you see him getting taken, which is kind of funny. All right, let's see what we want to do here. I think I saw Higgins go, which is unfortunate. Man, this is an interesting room we have here. I could potentially double tap Harvey and Giddens, who do feel like they're potentially a tier above some of the really late round rookies. And I'm just going to do it and the reason I'm going to double tap them is because I find myself taking one of them a lot, but I don't have a lot of teams with both. And now I can definitely be done at running back and can end this team with a run of wide receivers and one tight end. Again, I don't build a ton of teams like this. I don't know if I successfully am landing this plane. As we talked about earlier, I kind of got the weird Chase plus Daniels thing, but I don't really hate what's going on here. I think there's a lot of upside at each position, and yeah, just hope it's the right guys. Greg, you are talking my language. Yeah, this feels like a potential Nick Westbrook-Akine team if I've ever seen one. I do think if like Shedeur Sanders wraps all the way around, I could see myself adding him, but honestly, that might just be getting a little too fancy. Well, Greg, we've talked about this, right? With the search for the Miami wide receiver 3. You know, we've lost many good men on that quest, and maybe we found him, right? Like, who knows? We had Odell Beckham, we had Berrios, we had River Craycraft. This can't be worse, right? And he showed upside. Like, he showed upside last season, and I don't know. I don't hate it. I think he gets dismissed kind of lazily, right? Like, it's like the Westbrook-Akine spike last year felt so like fake, that I think people are willing to be like, yeah, this is stupid. But I don't know. I'm not afraid of like Parker Washington or them really drafting another receiver highly. That wouldn't make any sense. Not that the Dolphins have to make sense. Yeah, flashes of. I mean, there we go. The 6-foot receiver on the Dolphins has been our white whale, just searching for this but never finding it. Yeah. All right, Jalen Noel goes, who I would have loved to add to this team. Sometimes Zach Ertz randomly falls, but this would be a pretty big drop considering I think we might have one person autoing. So, you know, sorting by ADP. I don't know. I wouldn't mind pairing Ertz with Daniels. I do worry that there is a certain amount of risk that Ertz does turn to dust, but he didn't turn to dust last year, so I can't just assume it's going to happen again. Hunter Henry goes. All right. Man, I don't want to take Josh Palmer, but he might be who we end up with. We will see. Yeah, a few people autoing, and so now if they are and they're going by ADP, Zach Ertz will get drafted to Slosel. Nope, Ollie Gordon. Ollie Gordon goes. Man, if I could trade in my Ollie Gordon shares at 20 cents on the dollar, I would. But no one's taking that right now. I felt like we were flying through this draft, and then like people bailed. Don't know what happened there. Jeremo's autoing, and Jeremo has 4 quarterbacks: Nix, Dak, Penix, and Tua. No wonder we could not get falling QB value. It is because this guy autoing here. I just do not understand the autoing without ranks. Who Hames, welcome. Thank you so much for coming by. Really appreciate it. I know I always see you on the Best Ball Barbecue guys, and those guys are awesome. And so I really appreciate you swinging by over here. Was hoping to do 2 drafts, but I think this one I'm going to have to end after this. And I am currently in a position where I really just need a whole bunch of wide receivers because I have not taken one since pick 97. And one thing about me is I am hopelessly addicted to Jack Bech. I think as far as the later rookie flyers, he just feels like a guy some NFL team's going to fall in love with. Converted tight end, catches everything. Has played with some really good target competition at LSU. And then I'm just going to add Jalen Tolbert on the potential upside of Dallas not adding anyone significant. I know earlier in this draft I said Matthew Golden to the Cowboys, and now I'm telling you they're not going to add anyone, and I'm drafting Jalen Tolbert. So, not the most consistent storyline I'm weaving here, but in the big board, all things are possible. So we can get Matthew Golden at 12 to Dallas, and Dallas not adding anyone, which is good for Jalen Tolbert. But in all seriousness, I do think Tolbert was fine last year when called upon. Obviously, a lot of his production came with CD Lamb out, but he does have a role even when Lamb is there, and I think Dallas could potentially be at least a more functional offense. They, losing Dak, kind of set everything back. So I don't mind taking him in the 17th to 20th round. I think he is a perfectly fine click here. So Shedeur Sanders goes Zeke. How many quarterbacks? Okay, I thought that was the 4 QB team. Just looking at who people are taking late. Nothing too unsurprising. Brashard Smith, one of my favorite late round clicks. Going the other way, converted wide receiver, converting to running back. Very fast at the combine. His other metrics were kind of so-so, but again, feels like the kind of player that could land a role in the NFL. Same with Damian Martinez, who just reminds me like a little bit of just like dependable, not exciting running back out of Miami. Does seem like he could be an early down grinder kind of player that could definitely catch on somewhere. So those are actually two late flyers I am in on. Also, I'm going to need to add a tight end to this room. But Who Hames, I know you were a late joiner. I got a bit of a faller in Jaden Daniels from the 101. Got him at the 3-4 turn. So I got Daniels, Fields, and then a running back room of Bucky, Chuba, and then Bashal Tutin, Ray Davis, RJ Harvey, and DJ Giddens. A wide receiver room of Jamar Chase, Garrett Wilson, Calvin Ridley, Matthew Golden, Darnell Mooney, and then Jack Bech and Jalen Tolbert, with tight ends of Jonnu Smith and Isaiah Likely. So a little bit of an eclectic team here, but sort of in a vacuum, all players I'm happy to have, and feel like this team. Weird, the Terry drafter passed on. Yeah, I was surprised he came all the way around too, right? I don't know. I was going to say, I didn't know if that was a function of him getting worried about getting frozen out at wide receiver, but then he literally took 2 receivers and then 4 running backs. So he was not scared of getting frozen at wide receiver at all. But what it did do, it allowed him to take an unstacked Patrick Mahomes. And there is a certain type of drafter that simply will not pass on unstacked Patrick Mahomes in the 70s. And often it's the type of drafter that has 2 wide receivers through 6 rounds, then gets to the 7th and says, we need a quarterback right now. And that's where we ended up, somewhat surprisingly. So I think I would not mind adding Darius Slayton to this team. Just got a unnecessarily large contract in New York. Mahomes or bust. I actually have I probably have more Mahomes than I should, but honestly, I feel like I feel like their defense isn't going to be as good, so they might actually have to like throw more. I think Worthy's actually turning into, a pretty serviceable player. I think Mahomes is actually going lower than he should. All right, so I'm going to take Slayton here. And then who am I going to add? I'm going to take Slayton. I know who we want. I know who. Oh, no, there we go. I'll take Slayton and Westbrook Ikine here. And that will round out the wide receiver room. Westbrook Ikine, to me, he's the 60 IQ and 140 IQ player who it's like it seems like really dumb, like, oh yeah, he'll be good, the third receiver on the Dolphins, but like it might actually be good. And I do think the Finns are going to be better. I feel like they've been looking for a third receiver for a long time. I don't mind adding him here. He might suck, but he's also the ninth receiver on this team, so I don't mind taking the flyer there. And again, I feel like Darius Slayton is going later than he should, especially being that we're projecting better quarterback play in New England. When Tyreek gets traded at the deadline and our season is dead, NWI will rise. Well, as a Dolphins fan, betting on the demise of our season has been has not failed us in a long time. So, yeah, again, it's hard to know what his contingent upside really be without seeing the team. Last year, obviously, the sort of Dolphins circling the drain. Jonnu was the big beneficiary who, is already on this team. So, again, if the Dolphins stink, these could be the guys that kind of pick up the pieces. And maybe if the Dolphins are good, a rising tide lifts all boats. Again, this is what happens in the big board. We can tell ourselves two stories that do not make sense together, but yet we do it anyway. And so we have Westbrook Ikine and Jonnu together. No matter what happens with the Dolphins, we're going to tell ourselves it's going to work. And then I guess with the last pick, I need a. Oh my gosh, I thought that was it at running back. At tight end, I need a tight end. If I don't get one of these three, I am going to regret not taking a tight end earlier, because after the Michael Mayer line of demarcation, who himself could legitimately be drafting the backup tight end for the Las Vegas Raiders, which seems really bad. After that, I'm really out on these guys. Maybe Conklin. Maybe Conklin gets a little life, right? Chargers definitely seem live to draft somebody. Conklin, has never really been that exciting of a player, but at least he's a guy that's can randomly kind of get 5 or 6 catches in a game. Not excited to take Tyler Conklin. Does not seem like a big spike week guy, but in the ideal world also will not be a 0. Noah Fant could make sense, but I'm so snake bit on Noah Fant from last year when I thought he was like gonna be a thing, that it is very hard for me to click his name. Maybe after the draft if the Seahawks don't add anybody, but I guess the Kincaid Industrial Complex loves to make excuses for him that he was injured all year. Fant kind of was injured all year, so you could probably make the same excuses, but being that he's over, playing in Seattle and he doesn't have an adoring fan base, like the Kincaid truthers are, maybe Fant isn't as bad a click as as he is in my head. But again, wow, Jeremo, 5 quarterbacks. This is what happens when you auto draft. Who else did he get? He got Aaron Rodgers. Oh my God. Well, the old 5-6-7-2. Yeah, yikes. I don't know what else to say. Team isn't like horrific otherwise, but five quarterbacks. I mean, dear God. Yeah, who Hames? I've considered turning off position limits because your queue does not override the position limits, which famously burned Davis last year when he thought he was getting Sion Vaki, and because I was the only guy in his queue, and then it took Geno Smith, which we ended up, which probably ended up better because Sion Vaki was literally a stone zero. But yeah, I think the queue should override your position limits, but it doesn't. That said, if I get disconnected, I would much rather the computer not land me with 5 quarterbacks, because your team is literally just dead at that point. But yeah, everyone, thank you so much for stopping by. I wish I had the time to do another one, but unfortunately, got to end it here. Again, please, if you're here, like and subscribe. I will wrap this team up with Jaden Daniels and Justin Fields at QB, Bucky, Chuba, Tootin, Ray Davis, RJ Harvey, and Giddens at receiver. I'm just going to... I don't know if I want Chig or Mason Taylor. You know what? I'm going to take Chig. I'm going to take Chig to go with our friend Ridley and hope that the Titans are better. I think I clicked him. Well, we may never know. But wide receiver room of Jamar Chase, Garrett Wilson, Calvin Ridley, Matthew Golden, Darnell Mooney, Jack Betch, Jalen Tolbert, Darius Slayton, and Westbrook Akine. And a tight end room of Smith, Likely, and possibly Chig Okonkwo. But who knows? Because it literally froze. Dear God. Well, I'm just curious as to who I got here. Big board, last team. We did get Chig, so we got our guy. Anyway, thank you all so much for coming by, and I hope to catch you all soon. Take care, everyone.